everyone. Thank you for joining another Casework stream. We are joined today by experts to talk about the AFFF firefighting foam lawsuit. When I say experts, I want to take a moment and introduce you to our guests and then have them share a little bit about their background. We'll start off. We've got Cade here today, and he is from the Environmental Litigation Group. And we are also joined by both Darren Miller and Adam Bender with D. Miller and Associates. So thank you all for joining and talking about AFFF with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Susan.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess, just to get things rolling, if you can share a little bit about your background. Greg, I know you've got a really unique firm and what you're focused on. And so I'd love for folks to hear a little bit about that. Maybe what drew you to the practice of personal injury, mass tort, and class action. So, Greg, why don't you start us off?
Sounds good. Yes, my name is Gregory Cade. I'm here in Alabama with the Environmental Litigation Group. And you're right, we're kind of a unique law firm. We handle only environmental and toxic tort matters because most of us around here are science-based people. In other words, our background is either in chemistry, and as myself, I'm also an industrial hygienist, not just a lawyer. Environmental management, where we focus specifically on matters where most often people are injured by some chemical or toxic insult that may lead to, some serious whether it's a, injury of some sort or death in many instances. But we also do work, a little bit of work in terms of, just helping companies sometimes when they have an environmental issue to try to get themselves up to par and be compliant with environmental related issues. But for the most part, that's kind of what we do.
Well, thank you for being with us today.
Sure.
Darren, tell us a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Susan. Again, it's attorney Darren Miller, and I feel like I'm equally as unique as Mr. Cade over there, in terms of us kind of doing our own different spin on things. We obviously start off doing a lot of personal injury and a lot of mass torts, but the thing that makes us a little bit different as far as these concerns is that we like to take on cases that we're passionate about and then figure out how to get other lawyers involved in terms of diversifying into other areas of law that they may not have specific areas of expertise, but they want to try something different that they ordinarily wouldn't do, but need other experts like my friend Greg there to kind of lead the charge with regards to making a difference in people's lives.
Yes, you said passionate, and I'm sure everyone will hear the passion come out because I hear it when you talk about your firm and just how the expectations about taking care of these plaintiffs.
Absolutely. That is why we're here. So that's the biggest part of this.
Yep, exactly. Well, Adam, tell us a little bit about what you do at D. Miller.
Yeah, absolutely, Susan. Thanks for having me. My name's Adam Binder. I work with D. Miller and Associates and DMA Advocates here in Houston, Texas. I am the partner relations manager and a consultant in the industry. So I get to take Darren's excitement and Greg's excitement and go kind of spread the love a little bit. So I'm helping new attorneys diversify into the world of mass tort, but also being a consultant and helping seasoned veterans of the industry kind of expand their reach, gather more cases, and implement new systems and processes.
Well, Adam, that's, a lot of the attorneys that are listening today, keep in mind, too, there are attorneys that want to get into mass tort. They don't really know how to do that. And so I know the services that you offer are so valuable, and I know we're going to talk about that later. So thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Well, let's just jump in. As I mentioned, when I started this, we're going to be talking about AFFF. This is a complex case that has far-reaching consequences. Again, we're grateful to the experts that are here today to share their combined knowledge of both the personal injury law and going to help us walk through the AFFF firefighting foam lawsuit. Let's start with a little bit about the background. Greg, if you could just really stand for, what is it used for, and how has this product been used?
Sure. So AFFF, or aqueous film forming foam, some people call it aqueous firefighting foam, but it's aqueous film forming foam, okay, is a chemical that was designed back in the 50s for the sole purpose of being able to suppress flames by removing the oxygen content that typically causes a fire to get out of control and suppress flames. It's a lot more effective than water in many instances. And it was originally used for the purposes of handling or addressing like chemical fires and difficult fires to put out in certain type of environments. But, it's been used many ways, just a fire retardant in general, from the military, who often use it at, military bases or airports and things of that nature. And just to deal with more problematic fires and such. Okay, these chemicals are very, very high in demand. Have been high in demand for a very, very long time, and therefore it's been often sold to the government for the purposes of being a product that the government would utilize all over the world in many different places. And so, where this chemical has been used, it has now become an environmental problem virtually everywhere you can determine. Okay.
Darren, how did you get interested in these firefighting cases? And you talked about being passionate. Why is this so important to you?
It's important to me, Susan, because we started long time ago, long time ago, looking at like these Camp Lejeune issues and seeing all the problems that were related to military folks and cancer. And so so we started with that fight, and we've got a bunch of cases as related to that particular issue. Some of the clients used to call us and say, hey, listen, here's what's going on as related to their firefighter relatives in terms of having cancer and having other issues. And then as we started to kind of look at some of these cases, it was unbelievable how prevalent these issues were and how people in the military and these firefighters were literally dying just because of their exposure to these things, and like no one was doing anything about it. And so, Greg and I talked about it, and so I initially said, we got to fight this, we got to get going, we got to get moving on this thing. And so we started to do some of these things in-house. And then I educated myself and figured out that Greg's been fighting this fight forever. And so Greg and I started talking, we started working together, and we think alike. And so look, two heads are better than one when you're fighting all these different companies, which I'm sure that Greg's about to tell us about. And so I'm just glad that we've been able to get with someone who really cares, who's not just a lawyer, but he's a scientist. He understands, he's not afraid to fight. And so we're putting all these powers together to, at a minimum, while we can't fix and resolve these problems, at least we're moving towards getting better resolutions for those people that are most affected by this huge problem.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like the two of you guys coming together and both of your backgrounds is going to be a powerful duo for the plaintiffs. Greg, you mentioned you were giving us a little bit of background. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what the problem with AFFF is?
Yeah, so AFFF is, first, think of it as probably one of the most persistent chemicals we've ever dealt with. Or let's say that a component of AFFF, PFAS, is one of the most persistent chemicals that we've ever dealt with. In other words, you can find this chemical anywhere. All right. Now, when I say anywhere in the environment, in animals, in people, and virtually everything you touch these days. The problem with this chemical is that it has been determined or found to cause cancer in many aspects. Okay. So obviously the people who are most likely exposed are firefighters. Firefighters use this chemical in a very, very high capacity daily in whatever form or another, whether it's from training or, you'll hear stories about firefighters playing with these chemicals and, if they got some kind of celebration going on. But, it's been determined here, I would say in the recent years that, for the purposes of of saying, hey, when do we find out that these chemicals are dangerous or problematic? Let's just say in the last few years. But as we dig back into this litigation and go back into what has been determined through discovery, these companies that made these chemicals knew that these chemicals were problematic to the human body, animals, and the environment for the most part, meaning that they have seen these correlations, whether it's from some of the most mild conditions up through cancers of, in many instances, of the unique type, leading to seem to be putting a high rate of cancer in our firefighters throughout the world. Okay.
As far as bringing this litigation into the courtroom, how did the issue with AFFF even get into the courtroom, and who's held liable?
So some of the initial early lawsuits that were filed actually were cities or governments bringing claims because their water systems were impacted by these chemicals. They were finding a high concentration of these chemicals next to plants that manufacture these chemicals or dispose of these chemicals and whatnot. They started testing in areas and found out that the wells and the water systems in general had a high content of these particular chemicals. And they also saw a unusual high level of injuries of cancer in certain types in these areas. There was a lawsuit that probably got most attention in Ohio a few years ago, then another one over in West Virginia, and they were all community type exposure type matters, but they also had injuries that are directly in line with what we see in firefighters, and there were just people living in the areas that had conditions like kidney cancer and testicular cancer and pancreatic cancer. And I mentioned those cancers in particular because those cancers are noted very well in our science that are likely related to these AFFF chemicals. So from there, this litigation started looming pretty much all over the country. People started looking and determined that there are cities that were impacted with these chemicals, the water systems and such. The government started looking at it. So now we have litigation that's wide open dealing with AFFF and an MDL located down in Charleston, South Carolina. So that litigation's been ensuing now for about 3 years. It's before Richard Gergel, Judge Richard Gergel, where I'm one of the members on the Plaintiff Executive Committee. And so we're litigating that matter for a number of firefighters and people injured by these chemicals.
Well, you mentioned also the kidney cancer. What are some of the reported injuries that we can expect to see in the future? And then also, based on your experience, do you have an estimate of not only the current volume of plaintiffs in the lawsuit, but the potential impact?
Yeah, so, there's a host of, and I would think of them as from a higher degree of association to a degree association, because all of them are linked by the studies. We have kidney cancer, we have testicular cancer, we have prostate cancer, we have pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, bladder cancer, non-cancer ulcerative colitis. We have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, colon cancer in many aspects, leukemia, lymphoma, some instances of breast cancer, which we've seen in some male firefighters even, and ovarian cancer. So I look at that as a varying degree of very high linkability down to a lower end of linkability, but there is an association with all those injuries I just described. All right.
Is there anything unique about the plaintiffs in this litigation?
Well, I could say unique. In fact, they've been exposed. We could prove up from many aspects that their exposure has been high. But certainly, as the litigation describes itself as aqueous film forming foam or firefighting foams, we see a lot of firefighters that seem to have a very, very high prevalence of these conditions I just described. So, but we see these conditions again in those who are living around military bases. We living on military bases, and we can prove up that their exposure has been high to these chemicals. So the condition seems to be very in line with both groups of those people, exposed people. Okay.
So Susan, I gotta jump in here.
Yeah.
So this is one of the reasons, as you're clearly seeing, as to why my firm at ELG works so well, is that while Greg he's so smart and knowledgeable on these issues, but he can relate to you. He lets you understand. He kind of can dumb it down for us with regard from a science perspective, knowing that he's the guy on the front lines and can go toe to toe with those guys out there when we need him to. And so he's been able to kind of educate me on a lot of things that I didn't know. And so because he speaks to me in this way, and then our clients, we can kind of create that line of communication and make sure it's just kind of a smooth transition. It's just worked so smoothly, and it works out certainly to the benefit of all the clients that are involved.
Sure. We were talking about this earlier, just the importance of keeping the plaintiffs informed and engaged throughout this process. And so having his firm and all that knowledge is just invaluable for sure. Greg, is this product still on market or has it been banned?
Technically, no, it has not been banned, but we anticipate a banning in 2024 as a result of an act that's called the Natural Defense Authorization Act of 2020 that essentially establishes that there's going to be at least a winding down or maybe let's call it a banning even, right, of this particular chemical, because this chemical is a bad actor, and it has caused all kind of impact to the environment and to humans and such. But to answer your question, it has not been banned. What industry typically do to be compliant with something like that, they'll change the molecules around. So these chemicals, the PFAS chemicals that are known to be problematic, they're C8 chemicals, all right, meaning that there's a bond around the carbon atoms of 8 different carbon bonds. They're going to change it to a C6. I think it's in the C6 world now. And you're going to eventually get down to C4 and maybe a generation X and all this. These are just names that are being used on how they're going to whittle down what they perceive to be the dangerous nature of these chemicals. And ultimately, they say that they won't be a problem. But my belief is that these chemicals are going to likely be problematic. I don't care how much they change the chemical formulation. Okay.
And when you talk about kind of the correlation between AFFF and PFAS, what is the importance of the AFFF MDL when it comes to the future history of the PFAS litigation?
So when people talk about AFFF and PFAS, they're really talking about the same family of these chemicals. So when you talk about AFFF, you're talking about firefighting foam or aqueous film forming foam that has the same makeup, or inside these foams, you got PFAS chemicals, okay? That is the dangerous component of AFFF, okay? The PFAS chemical, right? Now, when you talk about PFAS in general, you're talking about that could be these chemicals dealing with firefighting foams, Scotch Guard, you may know as the chemical that protects furniture and things of that nature. But they're all manufactured the same way by the same people. The 3Ms of the world and the DuPonts of the world, or at some time or another, they manufactured these chemicals. So when people say, well, what's going to happen with the PFAS litigation? Well, we kind of doing PFAS litigation, okay? And it is going to be very difficult to get away from aqueous film forming foams and have a separate world of just PFAS chemicals, because you're going to be basically talking about the same thing technically, okay? So,
Yeah. Darren, you talked about being passionate. What is so important about this litigation? And is this something that you would recommend that other lawyers get involved with?
Okay, from a passion perspective, Susan, I cannot think of a more worthy group of folks to protect and help than firefighters. These guys, in of their own rights, are not making a huge amount of money. They are not, not looking for all kinds of different attention. Yet they lay their lives on the line to help and save others. And then to think of what they're going through and to the issues that they're dealing with, and the fact that they're dying from these interactions. It's unbelievable. And to know that a lot of this is preventable, or things can be done to, so that, and that profit is a huge motive in what we're talking about, it's just disgusting to me. And it's something that we have to change, this mindset of corporations with regards to money being the end all and be all with regards to these particular issues. So I'm proud to be involved in this. I'm proud to take on their fights and to let people know what's going on and to bring these issues to the limelight. Because let's face it, many firefighters, hey, I'm okay, I'm good. But it's not about them typically. It's not just about them. It's about their families. It's about justice. It's about doing the right thing. And most importantly, it's about changing and curing companies' actions moving forward in the future. Because if they're doing these things now and they're unguarded, what's going to happen in future? So, Susan, to answer your question very succinctly, this is absolutely the litigation to get involved in as other lawyers, even if your knowledge is limited, even if you don't know exactly what's going on. That's why we're here. That's why we're a cooperative. That's why we help each other. We educate each other. We teach each other. We get folks like Greg to come in and show us the ropes, because he's kicked these guys in the ass before. From a industry perspective, he knows how to do this. And so while I'm going to go fight, if Greg can arm me with even more protection to make sure that my clients are better looked out for, that's why we create these alliances. And so I encourage all lawyers who want to do the right thing, who want to get involved, who maybe want to make some money too. This is the type of litigation that you absolutely need to have a part of your docket.
I mean, all the litigations are important, right? But I mean, it's the firefighters, like you said, in the military that wake up every day to protect us. The least we could do is turn around and help them in these type of situations. So definitely understand.
Right.
Greg, you mentioned earlier that the MDL litigation was set up. When was that formed?
So this litigation in general has been going on for, I don't know, you can go back to, as I described earlier, the lawsuits in Ohio and West Virginia. That's probably 6, 7, 8 years ago now. Following that and the lawsuits that that resulted from that type of litigation, all got consolidated. I think around 2018, I believe 2018. Before Judge Richard Gergel, and he's in Charleston. I can't remember if it's the Eastern District. I think it is, of South Carolina, where he is, stepped up and said, "Hey, I'm the guy to hear all this litigation that's is underway around this country." So thankful to Judge Gergel. We do have a venue where these matters can be heard all at once, at least on the issues that seem to be common across the country when these lawsuits are being brought, rightfully so, by the way.
So you're saying the MDL was formed in 2018, and if the bellwether trials are set for 2023, why this large gap, and what does that mean? This gap mean for the claimants?
So first, this is very complex litigation. There's a lot of stuff to be determined before you get to a trial. In fact, the trial date only came out, I would think, maybe 6 months ago, although this litigation has been going on for some time. And I suspect by the time we get to this June 2023 trial date, we will have more discovery done. But, this case is quite expensive, meaning that, you have 31 defendants, I think, last I counted, maybe more. And so we got to determine out of all of these defendants, what did they know? What did they know about this particular chemical, and how did it impact the people? When did they learn about the dangers of this chemical? And, a host of other things we need to know. So there are a lot of discovery that's even underway today. And I can't remember, but there are hundreds, if not a few thousand depositions that have been taken of the corporate people and the EPA and government people, letting us know about, what these chemicals how these chemicals have impacted the government, how these chemicals have impacted clients of all types. And from you have it, there's a lot of things to be determined. And the fact that we got a trial date, June 2023, that is great. Now, that trial date is set for a portion of this litigation. The way the case management order is set up, we're dealing with the type of parties that are part of this litigation, and such as the government and the water systems and such, right? They are the first round out. Then we have another period where bellwethers are going to be selected, which are underway now, being selected, but we don't have that trial period set up yet for the PI type claims, firefighters and people who drink water and other type people that may have been exposed to these AFFF chemicals. So, but it's a very complex case, but we think we're working through all the details, and we believe that by the time we get to the 2023 trial, we'll be fully prepared to go and litigate against these bad actors. Okay.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the 3M's defense attorneys filing the motion for summary judgment, mainly based on the government contractor immunity argument, and why that didn't work?
Sure. So yeah, so that's a portion of a summary judgment. I suspect there'll be other things as this litigation continues. They'll try to argue a little bit about, we had good reason to make these chemicals because the government told us to make these chemicals. Well, government contractor defense is coming any type major litigation because, in fact, the government is often a buyer of these kind of chemicals, and they often give these, formulas of what they need it for, how it can be used and all of this kind of stuff. Well, truthfully, there are government contractor defenses that are real. Some are just crap. Obviously, they're the defendants getting a ruling against them. They didn't argue very well that these chemicals were, in fact, a need for the government based on their ordering from them. Okay. So, the government, the courts basically just determined that, you may be able to make some instances where the government has put forth a need for this, but that is not the real issue here. And we are going to essentially rule against you, defendant, for the purposes of the fact that you didn't fully establish that these chemicals are some government ordered concept. Okay. So that's typically the argument with any of these type large litigations where you have a government contractor defense out there.
Adam, Greg has shared, and Darren, you guys have really provided some great insight about the science and the background about the case. But I guess, Adam, I'm interested to learn a little bit, kind of bring it down to, there's going to be a lot of plaintiffs, as we heard from Greg, that are impacted. How does D. Miller attract, retain, and keep these plaintiffs well informed throughout this process? And then also just want to understand a little bit about the steps that your team takes as you approach a Bass Tort project.
Yeah, absolutely, Susan. So I'll answer that second part first for you. So reviewing the science, right? Exactly what we've been talking about now. Very, very important. Review the science, review the facts of the case. Reach out to the other attorneys in the industry that we trust, to Greg, Cade, and others, and just pick their brain. What do they like about the case? What may concern them about the case? And then what kind of cases they would be looking to go after themselves. From there, that will help us put together like a baseline criteria for intake. And from there, we're going to go ahead, reach out to our trusted vendors, ad agencies in the industry, just to kind of get a feel for cost, see what they're seeing cost per acquisition wise, conversion rate wise, all that good stuff. And we're going to work with content creators to tailor the ads, most importantly to the demographic, right? You want your ads and your messaging to be tailored to them. We're talking about firefighters and military here with the fire foam litigation. That's going to be a much different messaging, much different vibe than that of a abuse case or something dealing with specifically females, or just something different. You want to make sure that that's tailored specifically to that demographic. I don't think I have to tell anybody, a lot of these veterans aren't quick to jump at these kind of opportunities to join a lawsuit like this. Most importantly, Susan, is training our intake team to be experts on the topic. They're not going to be able to answer everything perfectly. That's why we have an attorney on the floor. But we want our team to sound like experts on the topic, to be personable and friendly with these claimants so that they do feel comfortable not only telling their story, which is very personal, but also entrusting us to actually do what we say we're going to do and fight for them. So a bit of a long-winded response there. As far as our process, we are engaging these potential new clients daily. If they're not answering our calls, that will also include text message and emails as well. These texts and emails, they may include links to documents that we need them to complete. They may include links to an article to teach them a little bit about the litigation. Once the PNC is qualified, we're going to send them a sign-up packet via DocuSign, have our team walk them through it over the phone, answer any questions they may have. And then once the clients retain, we're going to go over a lengthy questionnaire, an intake questionnaire with them, just to dig a bit deeper into the facts of their case, gather facility info, all that good stuff. Most important, a quality review. So before we send the case to Greg Cade, or before we send that case to Darren, we want to go over it with a fine-tooth comb, make sure everything adds up, the story makes sense, and that we should have indeed qualified and retained this claimant. Most importantly, I think you brought up client messaging and communication. There couldn't be anything more important. So from the jump, we are providing our clients with a unique email address as well as a unique phone number. So they can message these email addresses and phone numbers that will fall directly into our system onto their profile, and then it will ping their caseworker, letting them know that, hey, John Doe has sent a message, here it is. We're also providing them with numbers, emails for the litigating firms, setting them up with monthly or quarterly newsletters and updates. But also just trying, if there's no updates every couple months, trying to re-engage them and just let them know that we still are working on their case. Anything to touch the client before they call in for an update is where we want to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, being proactive versus being reactive. And one of the things you said that really stood out to me was that sounds like you guys are really educating the people that are initially talking to people on the phone about the science and about the litigation. So they're not just checking, they're not just going through a list of questions and check mark, got that answer. They really understand the why behind the questions that they're asking. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. The claimants can see right through it. If you are not informed or educated, or you're pulling answers out of the ether, they know that. They can feel that. So yes, ma'am, sure. You want them to be experts. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Well, you mentioned connecting with firms like Greg's team. Greg, I'd love to hear from you. Really, what stood out about this case, and what is your team focused on currently?
Yeah, and let me just touch on another quick subject, if you will, Susan. Then I answer that question. I wanted to mention earlier that one good thing about this particular litigation has been going on for some time, and we have worked real hard to push this thing to a trial. And I can tell you that because we've done this, we do have lots of discussions on the way with resolution, meaning that we have several defendants talking in terms of trying to want to resolve this case, which, when you want to enter into a case like this and you call it, some firms look at this as an investment firm, as an investment opportunity. This case here headed toward a trial will likely get to a global resolution sooner rather than later. Okay. We have a mediator selected even. So, at the end of the day, if you're out there looking, trying to figure out what case makes sense for you, when you're working with Darren or his group, this case here probably makes a lot of sense from that perspective, because it may be a shorter run for your investment to get to the back end of this case, when a number of these cases out here in the mass world typically take a lot longer. Okay, so and you asked me a little bit about why I think this case is a good-looking case, or what do I think about it? Well, it's a little bit of what Darren said earlier. These are firefighters, first of all. Okay. These are the people who protect, our families, ourselves and our families and such. And these guys are put in harm's way every day, all day. Okay. They are required to work with a chemical, right, that is intended to, to suppress a flame in the very business of what they're in. And yet they find out that these chemicals are in fact carcinogens. They can cause cancer and can cause all kind of health claims and whatnot, while being told these are okay chemicals. They're safe. They're you can use them as part of your job. So just use them and shut up. So think about that. That's a terrible thing to do to a particular person. It's almost the same as telling a person he can, wake up every morning and drink water from this particular fountain and not tell him that this fountain, is laden with some dangerous chemical that can kill him as well. Okay. So, I mean, those are, by and large, that's a very important thing about these cases. We think that we're doing something for a group of people who we love and cherish. And hopefully at the end of the day, we get some form of resolution that will hopefully make them whole again. So, right?
And Susan, the other thing to add to that too is that because again, Greg and the other aggressive litigators involved have moved this thing along so quickly, now is the time for the firefighters to really establish their justice and really to figure out what their damage models are, to get on top of this as soon as possible. Because again, as Greg mentioned, now is the time to put all these details together and get in the front of the line, as opposed to waiting until later and crossing your finger and hoping that things work out the right way.
Yeah, for sure. Adam, starting to kind of wrap things up, what ways do you see law firms changing their approach to class action cases?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. What I'm seeing, first and foremost, Susan, is it's all about relationships now. It is not what is everyone else doing, what is everyone else talking about, what are they selling the hardest. It is about who can I trust the most, what relationships have I built, what are they going after, and that's for both vendors, ad agencies, as well as co-counsel and litigating firms. I'm seeing a much more slow, deliberate approach to jumping in and not just kind of following the crowd, really, really digging deep and first and foremost, looking at relationships to build as opposed to a return on investment. Also, I'm seeing a lot of high-tech approach. We're seeing a huge amount of AI-driven systems, automated-driven intake, predictive learning AI that knows what messaging to go to this person versus the next. Just a really big explosion of tech in the industry, and I think it's been great. And then maybe most importantly, is the importance of data and reporting. It's one thing, everybody wants to talk about cost per acquisition. That's that's important, but that's only one drop in the bucket, sure. Right? We want to see and have visibility into everything, not only acquisition costs, but conversion rates. How many retainers are we sending out digitally versus how many we're physically mailing out? How many claimants are telling your intake specialist that they're not interested after they filled out a form? Every single piece of data that we can analyze, we want to analyze it because it's going to give us insight into either our current docket and performance or help us make the right decision moving forward into something new.
Exactly. Having the data at your fingertips certainly helps make the decisions, and every tort's different, and what works on one and one demographic certainly doesn't. That same process, as you know, isn't going to work on another. So great insight for sure. Let's see, Greg, back to you. I wanted to find out what frequent problems do you encounter when it comes to managing the client expectations in a case with, such a large number of plaintiffs?
I try to tell every client we take in, please be patient. It's probably more on us than it's on you right now. Okay, we we understand that you or your family members are affected by, say, these chemicals because they hurt you in some way or another. But this is very complex stuff. This is very expensive stuff. These are matters that we have to be really careful in the courts, where we have to explain things where people can understand. Darren said earlier, I'm pretty good at trying to make this this stuff seem kind of elementary and understanding, right? But it's very, very complex. It does take, a person with my background to to be able to decipher this information and put it out there in the world so that you can understand what's going on. I try to do that with all our clients. I explain to them the risky part of trying to present a case of this nature to the courts. But we also talk in terms of, our success in doing this type of stuff. And we are the firms that you want to hire to try to,
Sure.
get to the back end of this. But, and mostly when I put that speech out there before clients and just whoever's on our team, they understand, it is what it is. It's just, it's tough, complex litigation. Okay. But we feel good about it. We know that we'll come to a positive end at some stage here. So, we are confident that we're moving in the right direction to get, to reach what they want to get out of this matter. Okay.
It sounds like from Adam's point, it's you got to have the right messaging. From Darren is like the right communication, speaking to them, and what you just said is like setting the right expectation up front. So
absolutely.
Yep.
Darren, for the lawyers that have additional questions and want to get more involved in this litigation, what do you tell them? And what if they don't know how to even get involved?
Susan, what I tell them is very simple. I tell them, look, life is very short. Your legal life is even shorter. And so get involved. Stop making excuses and start making things happen. Find projects that you're passionate about and ask questions. Get your feet wet. Take a chance. And when you get the opportunity to work with other lawyers who feel equally passionate about certain things that are not just going to line people's pockets, but make a difference, make society as a whole better, man, it provides you so much satisfaction. And so I tell every lawyer, as related to certain cases, there's some that I just feel so passionate about, so strongly about. And this is absolutely one of those particular cases. We're doing the right thing for the right purposes against the right defendants to get to the right result to help society at large. What else do you want? So again, that's what we've done. We make it as easy as possible to teach people, show people, regardless if you go with us or whoever, get involved. And we give the knowledge to people out there so that they can change society for the better and just bring a whole lot of bring a better situation for society at large.
Well, one thing I've noticed about you, Darren, is, there's a lot of attorneys, they don't want to, it's like, it's all secretive. They don't want to tell them who they're working with or what they're doing. Whereas you, it's like, it's an open book. It's like, man, if you want to get involved, here's what you do. Here are the, I don't like to say vendors, here are the partners to work with, and this is how you do it. And like you said, you're in this field to help people and to seek justice. So you might as well pick a project that you're passionate about.
Susan, I just don't understand that there's so many people that, oh my gosh, if I tell anyone how successful you can be and how to get things to a better place quicker, that it's going to hurt them. No, it's not. It raises the tide. Everyone gets better when you teach people, and you get. From me, I found that other lawyers who are more successful reach out, gravitate towards you. You get to learn more, you teach more, and they will share with you when you share with them. So I love it. I'm going to keep doing
it. That's right. Okay, last question. What would a successful resolution look like in this case? Greg, you want to start us off?
Yeah, that is one of those most objective type questions that, well, first of all, we have made the firefighter community whole. Okay. Mm-hmm. These people who, put their lives on the line and in doing so, got cancer and these health problems that obviously, in many instances, is life threatening, right? These people are made whole. As it relates to the communities that have been impacted by these chemicals, or cities, whatever, the idea that we earn enough money for these cities and for these water systems where they don't have to, send dangerous water to households where people are continuing to drink these, these toxic substances and such, or taking showers in it and whatnot. And overall, what happens with all of this? Well, we recover enough money and that makes the whole world a better place again, because that's how I perceive AFFF chemicals. I think this chemical has been so problematic on society as a whole that we get rid of it completely. We make the people and the cities and the water system whole again, and these companies stop making this nonsense chemical, or they they just ban it, whatever they do, what they normally do. But get rid of this crap so that we can take care of our families from here on out. That's essentially how I see it. All right.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
If I would just add slightly to that, is for me, is changing the conduct of corporations and how they view their responsibilities to society at large. I know we're going to knock them out. I know we're going to recover a bunch of money for them, but I just want other corporations to understand, look, you can't make the decisions the way you've always done it, okay? Do the right things, and things will work out for you. If not, we are going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. And so the quicker they learn that, the better it's going to be for everybody across society.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me add to that right there, if you don't mind, Susan. Look, the modern way of getting the attention of corporations when they know they're doing things wrong and bad is doing exactly what we're doing. You bring lawsuits. You don't get heard out there just speaking in the back room, okay? You bring the lawsuit. I tell everybody. Some people say, Greg, should I file a lawsuit? Yeah, that's what you do. You have to file a lawsuit to be heard, okay? You have to go to court to be heard. And being an advocate of the courtroom, as well as Darren, that's what we do, okay? So, I mean, at the end of the day, you bring the lawsuit. You tell a corporation, look, you can try to think you're big and bad, and you got so much money, you're going to run us in the ground and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't work anymore. Okay. It never really worked with us. I'll be honest with you. I've told a lot of corporations or corporate people to their face, guys, leave that story alone. That's not going to work. Okay. We entered this game knowing that you would say that to me. Okay. So it's not going to work. So I really don't get that too much. I normally get a bottle of wine at Christmas time and say, hey, Greg, glad to have made you a friend after we won a pretty significant matter against that corporation. So that's how it works. Okay.
That's right. Adam, anything you would like to share?
Nothing to add. I couldn't have said it better. Doing right by the claimants and keeping these corporations from continuing to do it in the future.
That's right.
Great.
Well, I learned a ton. Greg, thank you so much for sharing all of the background and the science about this litigation. And Adam and Darren, it's just, of course, it's a pleasure to have you guys on. Again, your passion always comes through, Darren. It gets me pumped up and fired up, makes me excited about what I do. So anyway, thank you all for joining today and just taking the time to share the insights, the updates about this litigation. I know there's a lot of attorneys. We get asked a lot of questions. And so I'm just glad to have the experts on that can share all the information about it. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for putting this together. Working with you always is fantastic. And thank you most importantly for helping us get the word out.
That's right. Absolutely. Happy to.
All right.